Welcome back to the Kyle Olson Show. I'm joined now by Tony Daunt, who is Executive Director of the Michigan Freedom Fund. If you haven't heard of them, they're one of the very short list of organizations in Michigan that are fighting for limited government, transparency, which is something I think we desperately need more of, and the freedoms found in the Constitution. So, Tony, thanks for joining me today.
You bet. Thanks, Kyle, for having me.
And I just reviewed the whole boat scandal that was at the center of last weekend and the governor's activities and her husband's activities. To me, this is just sort of the latest in a long growing list of scandals. Talk a little bit about your reaction when you heard this story, what she tried to do to State Senator Tom Barrett and to Mike Shirkey, and what impact do you think this will have on Michigan going forward?
That's an excellent question. And, it was towards the end of last week that I had a friend passed along that Facebook post from the dock owner. My first reaction was, oh, this is probably just one of those, internet rumors that is meant to trap people into thinking there's a story when there isn't. So I didn't put much weight behind it, but I did take a few minutes to look into the individual who made the post, determined that he really does own this dock, and looked on the state's website. Yep, it's a registered business. And so I passed it along to a few media members, kind of on background, as this is worth looking into, and didn't really hear much from them on that. But it really seemed to get legs over the weekend. And I think ultimately what it speaks to is the hypocrisy of this governor and just a lot of people in charge, really, but in particular Gretchen Whitmer, where she spends her press conference basically warning people, think long and hard before you go up north. Don't all descend on Traverse City at once. And, this kind of scolding tone. And then we find out that, in fact, it was true, and her husband was up north and did use the "don't you know who I am" card to try and jump ahead of the line. And it's really shocking. And you alluded to this issue where the governor's office called the majority leader and had them take down, or ask Senator Barrett to take down a post. And it just screams cover up. This is the type of stuff that I think where the incompetence and the arrogance of the mindset of Governor Whitmer and her team has finally caught up to them. And to unnecessarily lie about something like this is an insight into the mind of the people on that team. And it, as Senator Shirkey said in the clip that you were playing, if she's willing to lie about putting a boat in the water, what else is she willing to lie about?
The arrogance. And the governor, I think, is very offended that anyone would even be talking about this. It seems a little implausible that somebody is going to go Memorial Day weekend, 6 hours, 400 miles round trip to rake leaves. But what was frustrating to me was that no one in the media sitting there, because there were a variety of reporters in the room, nobody asked to follow up about that and just said, are you really sure? Come on, level with us. There's very little, if any, scrutiny. And it just seems like we have this growing list, whether it is the contact tracing contract scandal. It just seems like there's one after another. And what's frustrating to me is that it doesn't seem like the legislature is really doing anything about this. You have Shirkey, and I thought his statement was good, and it was direct, and it was powerful. But where's the hearing? Why aren't you holding a hearing about the contact tracing? Why aren't you holding a hearing about the abuse of power, apparently, to try and get a boat in the water? And I think he's right. If they're willing to abuse power to get a boat in the water, what else is going on?
The frustration is palpable among you, among countless residents and citizens here in the state of Michigan. And, I know it, I can be frustrated. I get frustrated with the legislature at times too, but, it's such a unique situation. And this governor and her team have just run roughshod over any kind of decorum or tact or, appreciation for the fact that they need to work with this legislature. And so I think they're struggling to find a way to get a foothold to hold her accountable, because it's just so brazen how they've been acting. And you alluded to some of the other issues at hand. we're talking about this boat issue because it's something it's easy to explain, and it resonates. The hypocrisy resonates with people. Nobody likes to hear about powerful people pulling the "don't you know who I am" card to skip the line. It just rubs people the wrong way. But we can't forget some of the even more egregious abuses of power and things that they've been lying about and not being straightforward with, like the nursing home scandal.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that we have known from the get-go with this virus is that it impacts the sick and elderly the most. And we've got field hospitals set up at great cost, and they've treated maybe 50 people. And meanwhile, while those field hospitals are sitting empty, we're sending COVID patients into nursing homes. It's the most absurd thing that I can think of doing in this situation. We've locked the entire state down. We've crippled our economy, and all to protect the sick and the elderly and to flatten that curve. And here we have state government basically saying, you got to take these sick people in with the rest of your population. It's insane. And then the contact tracing issue that just broke, that the governor's team did in fact know about this ahead of time. They tried to smooth over what they knew would be some political problems, and they didn't pull the plug until it became obvious that it was a problem. It's really amazing.
Not to jump subjects here, but now you have the Michigan Department of Environment and Great Lakes and whatever else it's called investigating who was responsible for the dam breaking in Midland County, the 2 dams. And it seems to me, just based on what I have researched and written, it seems to me like that department itself could be involved and could have some liability. And so you have an agency which could have liability is now doing the investigation of the dams. And so how can, when you see the statements that the Attorney General Dana Nessel has made about President Trump not wearing a mask and, going after the Carl Mankey, the 77-year-old barber and all of that, she now is investigating this whole contact tracing contract. Is there any way to have any faith in what Dana Nessel is doing and that her investigation will actually hold the administration accountable?
I would liken it to having as much faith in Jeffrey Epstein watching over the sorority house. It is an absolutely unacceptable person to put in charge of investigating this. It's really 3 individuals between Dana Nessel, Jocelyn Benson, and Gretchen Whitmer who are trying to utilize this crisis to the best of their advantage, and they're just brazenly moving forward without any oversight, thinking they don't deserve to have any oversight. And I think it's time for independent investigations into all of this. And as we've seen with the governor and their first insistence that this boat story was a hoax and wasn't true, and then turns out, oh, yep, it really did happen. And, oh, this contact tracing, that's first I heard of it and I canceled it immediately. Oh, nope, that's not true. Any number of items. And I think people would be silly to put faith in anything that comes out of these offices. And I think it would be silly for those individuals in those offices to think anybody should have faith.
It's about time that the Michigan legislature step up and hold hearings and air all of this out and make sure the public knows exactly what is going on. Tony Daunt, Executive Director of the Michigan Freedom Fund, thanks for joining me today.
You bet. Thanks for having me, Kyle.
We'll be right back.